Hey everybody, welcome to Raising Vibrations. So this video is going to speak about the thoughts and ideas and perspectives that I hold at the moment. A big part of my goal with you in this video today is to speak to what I see as where we're heading with Pluto and Aquarius. I want to talk about the effects of Saturn in Pisces squaring Uranus, so that square. When we're talking about the Pluto and Sagittarius generation, I want to be talking about the way that I foresee us navigating this lunar and solar eclipse pattern that we're going through right now. And I want to tie it into what is occurring in the collective right now and using a model like astrology to help understand the metaphysics of what it means to be human right now. So that's what this video is going to be about. It's kind of multiple perspectives or multiple directions. I felt a deep need to talk about it. I think part of it is me processing out loud, and part of me processing out loud is sharing it with you to hopefully offer a perspective that helps you frame reality at the moment, and particularly the nature of what we're seeing, and also assimilate that in a way that hopefully empowers you. That's my kind of goal. I'm doing that for myself, and so, as I said, I'm speaking out loud in this video. I hope that you'll walk away from this with something of value. Part of this video comes from a moment of incredible insight and the need to process that insight. And as I said, using the model of astrology as well as other forms of how to frame reality, I'm going to try to distill this into something that makes sense to me, at least, and then kind of share that with you, okay? So this video can contain conversations of sensitivity, so be mindful that as I navigate down this sort of road, that there might be things that I say or mention that can be interpreted as whatever, right? It's a kind of Scorpio-Taurus conversation as well. The big part of this conversation for me is to point at things that may not necessarily be comfortable to point to. So that's something that I also don't want to kind of shy away from, is kind of talk about things on the surface, and then because it's good, you know, it's like comfortable. I want to go to conversations that I feel are important to say. While I'm saying that, it just varies from person to person. Okay, so just kind of letting you know that this conversation is not an astrological analysis primarily. It's me distilling what I carry inside of me in terms of my perception, and using astrology to, amongst other forms, to kind of frame it so that I can assimilate it for myself and try to make sense of it. And so this is me sharing it with you. Okay, what else is there that I think I should kind of just mention? The video possibly could be long, I'm not sure. I would encourage you to digest it in chunks if you want to make sense of what I'm trying to say here. And let's see where this goes. So I've got some notes that I've written down over there, and I just want to start off with what I have been carrying for the last 10 years, 10, 11 years, that I've been very curious and wondering how this is going to play out. So in around 2011, 2012, I was reading on a forum, the Jeffrey Wolf Green Evolutionary Astrology Forum. They talked about Pluto and Aquarius being a signature where you will see a large percentage of the population trying to process fragmentation and trauma and being consumed by it. And also percentage of the population being able to have the capacity to integrate or reorientate towards experiences of fragmentation. And so bringing things back together, like trying to reorganize in the face of disorientation and fragmentation. Okay, so think about what disorientation is and what fragmentation is. Okay, to feel what I'm talking about here. And just imagine when you're disorientated, everything doesn't feel still and in focus. It feels jumbled. It feels that reality does not feel safe. There's no capacity to feel grounded, right? Things are all over the place. And fragmentation is, or in a sense, a kind of divide. There's a divide between states of awareness, states of consciousness, states of presence. I am here, that person's there. We are not necessarily fragmented, but if we were to have vastly different ideas of things and we can't agree on that, there are aspects of our nature that are fragmented from something. So when I read this, it sort of it has like stuck with me. It's been in my energetic field for a very long time, and I would say that a large percentage of my, as I said, curiosity and wondering is, what does that mean? What does that look like? What does that mean? Now, for somebody like myself, I have the planet Uranus, I have Jupiter, the South Node. They're all very closely connected, and they're all in Sagittarius there, right on top of that. And they actually form aspects to my Mars and Venus. So my personal planets are very much connected to these outery social planets. And I have an Aquarius rising. So I'm very curious about what happens when Pluto in Aquarius. And I'm also deeply curious about what that statement meant. So if I kind of journey to where I am today, at different phases and times, I would start to gather information that would start to resemble, start to draw a picture for me, start to frame the context of what this looks like. And I think today, and over the last week, I'm starting to become fairly secure in my assumptions or insights, intuitions around what that statement was actually meaning. So a big part of this video today is me working through something that has stuck with me and kind of offering a way that, as I said, could try to make sense of the context of the world right now. Two things that I think are important to do. One of them is in the description, as well as the links below, or the comment section below, is a link to a video that I created a while back called Aquarius, right? I think it was even Saturn in Aquarius, but Aquarius, and it was the shadow side of Aquarius. I highly encourage you to go and watch that video. The reason why I'm encouraging you to watch that video is because if you watch it and then you look at the world right now, you can start to make and draw parallels and correlations between what I was talking about there. And that is a big part of this Pluto entering Aquarius and what that means for us as a collective. And I think for me, the value or the importance that I put behind Pluto and Aquarius and what that means for us for a collective is that it is true at the moment that we all share this planet together. Okay? It sounds such a silly statement to make, obviously. But what I mean by that is that there is no life raft, there is no boat, there is no series of ships that are sort of tethered to or attached to the Earth, and that at any point in time that we needed to press some form of eject button, there is a rescue plan that leaves. It's not there. At least from my point of view, there isn't anything there. So the intensity or the severity of that insight when it lands in my energy field presents me with, okay, whatever it is that's going to take place on the collective, we are going to, in some way, shape, or form, be drawn into, and we will be participating in. So therefore, it is important to pay some attention to the current state of the way that we as human beings are going to move forward, how we're going to be impacted by that, and also that we share this planet with a wide collection of people who are going to and are not going to agree and disagree with us, right? And that I think is really, really important. This is the capacity for tolerance, but at the same time, the nuances that comes along with what that means. I think it's very easy for me to say tolerance, but it is deeply nuanced. There are multiple underlying threads that exist behind that statement. And so therefore, it's not as simple as, oh, just tolerate. I'm trying to make that super clear. So, as I said, the weight of and value that I ascribe to the Pluto and Aquarius impact, what it means for us as a collective race, what this transit will do, and how we're going to navigate it is very important to me. I also at the same time recognize that the significance of my thinking, as well as what I'm sharing with you today, only reaches a certain amount of people, and I am definitely not in a position of any form of power to remotely impact or influence using my words over here. So this is, as I said again, a kind of speaking to those that follow this channel, follow the work that I do, and I'm kind of bringing you into a deeper conversation around what I see, sense, perceive around the world, and how I interpret and process reality using astrology. Okay, so Pluto enters Aquarius, Pluto is moving through Aquarius, and half the world will have the ability to, can process fragmentation and disorientation, and there will be those that will not be able to do that. That's a pretty intense thing to say. So at the moment, I have Neptune currently forming an exact square to my Neptune and currently forming an exact square to my natal moon sign. I also have Pluto transiting my 12th house, and of course Saturn is in Pisces. So for me personally, my sensitivity to reality is heightened around Piscean experiences. And to be more specific, when I say Piscean experiences, I mean chaos, uncertainty, unpredictability, the enormity of the world, the insignificance of my capacity to influence it at scale, but also the recognition that I do not feel apathy towards all of those things that can easily overwhelm my emotional system and say, there's no point, right? Check out. I feel that the very nature of that reality inspires me to activate something that is deeply within inside of myself. And so this platform, again, gives me that opportunity to voice that. So the next step in the story comes to Saturn in Aquarius, Saturn square Uranus and Taurus, and then fast forward to where we are today, which is Saturn in Pisces squaring Uranus and Taurus. Okay, so this kind of planetary system has been with us for just over 2 years. And we've also had Pluto transiting Capricorn for a very, 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 very long time. And it has done the things that it's done, changed the way that we as human beings have orientated ourselves as people of this world, what rules and regulations and new taboos and what definitions and boundaries we can and cannot cross, and cancel culture and all of the many things that comes along with Capricorn processes. But we've had Pluto entering Aquarius a bit, and everything just exploded. AI is everywhere, right? And it dips back into Capricorn. We've got Pluto squaring the nodes while it's moving in Capricorn, and we have a tremendous amount of, well, over the last year and a half, we've had 2 wars that have become front and center in reality. There are many others that are existing at the same time that are just as significant in many ways. But we've had a tremendous, strong Plutonian reality very present for us as the collective. And I'll break that down along with my synthesis of what I started with Saturn, Aquarius, Uranus. Okay, so the link here is Pluto will go back into Aquarius. My attempt is to try to make sense of what I see in the world as it's unfolding that's linked with Pluto and Aquarius, that helps me understand the statement, half the world will be traumatized, half the world will be able to try to process their trauma and integrate it in some way. What does that look like, and is there any validity to that sentence? Human beings, us, people, right? I'm going to bring it down to more of the familiar level. The relationship between Uranus and Saturn can be easily identified, recognized, and connected to if we take our attention away from the astrology and we bring it back to something that feels very real for us in our day-to-day lives. Okay. So at some point, all of us, depending on our age, but my sense of it is for the majority, we will have had to have interacted with a series of boundaries, definitions, laws, or authorities that would either decide the boundary, decide the law. Parents who, when you were growing up, they would say, this is what's yes, this is what's no, here's the boundary. You as a parent would have decided for your children and people around, this is what's the boundary, this is what you can do, this is what you cannot do, this is the rules. So each and every one of you watching this can in some way emotionally connect to the experience and sensation of what a definition or boundary or a law is, and what happens when you cross that boundary. Okay? We can immediately feel a sense of like the responsibility to not cross a boundary, or to not cross that definition, or to play by the rules. And then there is a what's the word? There is an effect that comes your way, a consequence that comes your way when you cross that boundary. Now, for the most part, Saturn, Capricorn, 10th house stories, those boundaries are there as a way to regulate chaos, uncertainty, distortion, and create a space where there can be a little bit more, regulation, essentially. Okay, so a child may be told by the parent, you're not allowed to climb this chair that's high, because to the parent, the consequence of climbing that chair may include falling off and injuring the baby. The baby's prefrontal cortex has not been able to map reality to be able to say, yes, this is a bad idea, or yes, I'm ready to take the risk. I know what the consequence is, right? So parents come in and they regulate that process. And as we get older, that authority stops regulating you as you take on the responsibility of regulating yourself. Okay? Now, as we know, that's a very complicated thing because most human beings do not have the natural pathway of that transition, and so it gets distorted. Okay. So one part of your emotional body, your sense of self, your identity, and this is even something weirder for those of you that have got Saturn retrograde, you have a sense of the world, you can map it, and you can say, here's where I have constantly interacted with boundaries, definitions, and rules. And for the most part, I can understand the concept of regulation as a way to keep something safe. Polarity point Cancer. When these definitions, boundaries, laws become senescent, right, outdated, they have run their course, because time moves on, we evolve from when we crystallize that identity, that we can now live in a space where those rules become, through becoming senescent or outdated, they become repressive. And so there needs to be a reform, right? A reordering of the boundaries, definitions, and rules so that we are now up to date with the current state of affairs versus, say, the boundaries and definitions that were created earlier. Okay? So at some point, you've had a disagreement, argument, emotional conflicts in your family system, right? Or organization. Let's say, for instance, your work, and the work says you got to do this, you got to do this, and then you cross that boundary and you get the consequence. You know what happens, right? There's a conflict, there's always emotions that get involved, and you're always rubbing up against that boundary, right? So you can relate to that. That's the Saturnian process of our structure of our consciousness. When the reform takes place, there has to be an active principle that comes along and makes us aware consciously that these boundaries, definitions now need to be reordered. So enter Uranus, okay? Now here's one piece of information that I think is really important to think about. It's easy to label Uranus, Aquarius, these types of this energy through our textbooks intellectually as, oh, the planet of upheaval, the planet of chaos, the planet of change. It's different to live Aquarius, Uranus, 11th house experiences. It's easy to say, oh, this is where you need to liberate yourself. This is where you need to do X, Y, Z. As an astrologer would talk to somebody in astrology, or you would see Uranus transit and say, well, this is, I'm trying to fill in the blanks here in terms of the potential experience that comes along with intellectualizing these keywords versus living Aquarius. Sudden, unexpected changes in the pattern. A moment in time that comes unexpectedly that leaves you devastated. The recent experiences that happened in the Middle East, that's Uranus. Upheaval, sudden rupture, and into the collective psyche, we now have things that have been buried underneath the surface. So the function, the role of Uranus is to hold a pattern that firstly awakens the senescent boundary of definitions and rules and regulations, so that when these two clash, they emerge the need to reorientate and put things into place relative to where we are today. And also to address where there is repression, where there has been the boundaries that have created rules, regulations that now need to be reordered. Now, if you think about growing up in a home, you've reached your teenage years, and your parents say to you, this is the rule. And there's a part of you that just goes, not in living hell am I going to live by that. Okay? You are against the definition, and you're saying, no, I do not want to be bound by, Saturn, bound by those rules anymore. And so that creates conflict. And all you need to do to truly understand the nature of Saturn Uranus at the moment in terms of the square is to flash back to conflicts that you've had in your family environment or at work where one side of the story says, here's the rules definitions. The other side says, actually, they feel outdated. They need to be reformed. I don't like I don't like being bound by it. And then what comes out of that? You can just think of any scenario, or you could just look at the world right now. So when these two principles of binding and unbinding hit, they create a conversation that says, what needs to be reordered, what needs to be changed, and look what has been repressed. It will come up. Now, Jeffrey Wolf Green used an analogy when he talked about Uranian experiences. He said, it is like a hand grenade that goes off inside a metal container. The Uranian energy explodes that which is repressed by the senescent boundaries, the rules, regulations that are no longer supporting any form of regulation, whether it be emotional or actual regulation per se, in terms of how boundaries can create safer interactions and not allow for rogue patterns to exist. When these repressions explode, they come out in distorted ways. They are unhealthy. They come out in fragments. They fragment everything around it. And then what you're left with is disorientation. You're left with displacement, and you're left with mass confusion, or in other ways, complex post-traumatic stress responses or post-traumatic stress responses. That is held in the collective psyche at the moment. Uranus and Taurus simply says, I'm here to reorganize the way that we as the collective, define things in reality. And that is a very complicated thing to think about, because there are so many nuances, there are so many hidden variables in life and in the world, that it is not possible to simply say that this is the reason why it's existing, that's the solution. There is always going to be complexity. I think that's why it's so difficult for us as human beings to embrace change, to pursue our dreams, to follow something that may feel risky but could dramatically change your life. Because the idea, as well as the capacity to psychologically and emotionally map reality, when we know that reality itself is complicated with nuances and variables that are not looking out for you in the same way that you would like it to personally identify you as, this is important to me. In other words, it's not looking at you and saying, well, I'll make this situation like this for you so that it will be easier for you. So we try to control things at macro and micro levels. We all do it, including me. And that controlling mechanism is another reflection of Saturn, where the boundary exists between what I'm capable of regulating between myself and that edge that says, that's too much for me to deal with, and so that's where I can, that's what I can comprehend. That's what I can process. And so when we have an entire world that individually has this mechanism of, here's what I'm capable of processing, and there's where the boundary is, and you take all of these, say, just imagine like 100 people, and you put them into a container where one of the rules are, sorry, there's no way out. And then you place into it complex human interactions with different variables and nuances and states of tolerance, like what can I tolerate and what I cannot. And then you add in sprinkles of PTSD and resentment and unresolved emotional dynamics, because boundaries have been crossed, but nobody educates anybody on how to actually do healthy boundary work and to communicate effectively. And what you have is the swirling space that has a likelihood of survival tending towards the sort of 10 to 15 to 20%. Because the very dynamics that are needed for social cohesion, right, are not instilled, trained, and we need to work through, pardon my quote over here, or pardon my French, we need to work through individual crap that we have, that we carry with us. But then we also have to be in the world where there is swirling collective crap. And I don't mean that in the visual sense. I mean it more in the sense that there is complexity of human nature that is becoming revealed at a rapid rate. And the capacity to imagine, not imagine, but to interact with the complexity of what it means to be human, that state is present with us. And that is what I think and I see and I observe and I reflect on when I look at the effects of Uranus squaring Saturn over the last 2 years. That we have this ongoing conversation between the collective unconscious psyche and the Saturn asking us, like, how are we going to figure out and process through our distortions when the processing of our distortions has not been something that we've carried in our collective field as a priority. And it's not, in my eyes, it's not possible for the entire globe to turn around and go, I think we need to actually deal with our crap first before we can begin to find tolerance. I don't think it's possible. It's too big. The planetary boundary of, and the necessity for us as a human species to exist in a way that understands this fundamental principle of, lots of repression and emotional distortion, and the need for that to be addressed as a way to survive, is what I have begun to realize speaks to a part of that sentence. Half the world will be traumatized by the transit, and half will have the capacity to understand its fragmentation, disorientation, and at least try to find some form of cohesion. Pluto in Aquarius, to me, along with, because Pluto will hit the south node of Neptune. South node of Neptune sits between sort of 13 degrees of Aquarius and 7 degrees of Aquarius, within that range. And the way that you can begin to process or understand what the south node represents, or what the planetary nodes represent, think of it like this. Okay, so we have to create it like this. You have to imagine / connect to where in your current energetic field you have a feud or a disagreement that is emotionally charged, or a wound or some form of effect that has happened to you that has stuck with you. Okay, so it's there. It's part of your memory field. And let's say in the year, 4 times in the year, you get into a situation where that memory gets reactivated and becomes part of your conscious mind. And then you deal with the complexity and the disturbance and the hurt and the pain and the distorted emotions and the memory of it. And then it kind of subsides away for a period of time. And then something will happen, say 4 months later, and it will bring it back to the surface again, right? And so you kind of oscillate between this deep memory that is part of your story as being a human being that we all have, that is there, it reminds you of the interaction, but then it kind of dissipates as the scenario or situation stops pointing at it. Okay? That's what a planetary node is. It's the collective's memory field that houses all of our memories as we have existed as a human race. Let me make this crystal clear. Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune are not planets, or not frequencies, or not principles of reality that look at us as human beings on the world and go, they're about to figure out this AI thing, or they're about to mess around with nuclear physics. I think we need to come in and stop them from doing something to themselves that could, potentially eradicate them. That is not what these planets do. Be under no illusion that Pluto transits come into your life and go, hey kiddo, I realize that the last 3 months have been really tough for you. I'm going to kind of just hold back for a bit and stop my process of deep energetic mutation within your consciousness because it's not favorable right now. Like, I think I'm just going to go to the bar, get myself a nice sort of drink and have a conversation with somebody, a good friend that I haven't met for a long time ago, and I'll put the pause button on what needs to happen in your life. Like, it doesn't, that's not what Pluto does, that's not what Uranus does, and it's not what Neptune does. Because they are not human in their nature. They are frequencies that are deeply embedded into the framework of what it means to see reality make itself up. So Plutonian experiences is the principle of regeneration through pulling you into something and reminding you of intense vulnerability. Uranian experiences is this needs to change, and this pattern will occur at any point in time, unexpected. Eruption will take place. It will change the landscape of your psychology forever. And that's part of your story. And Neptune will feverishly hold you in a massive illusion to the point where you have lost touch with reality. And then all of a sudden remove the veil, and the intense shock of that disillusionment will leave you wrestling with meaning in a way that is incredibly intense. It's our capacity to respond to that, to respond to these principles, that is what resilience is about. So when Pluto moves through Aquarius, it will bring AI to us. This is not about AI. It will bring artificial intelligence to us. But while we're focused on the glamour, right? I remember Jonathan Pajot was talking about Pluto and Aquarius. He wasn't talking about Pluto and Aquarius. He was just talking about humanity's relationship to AI. And I'll tether in, so this is what I'm about to do right now. I'm going to tether in Plutonian experiences that are linked with things like Chernobyl and Fukushima, Chernobyl, and also what will occur when AI comes into our life, right? So I'm going to tether these two things together, and they're all going to be reflections of what I mean when I say Pluto, Uranus, and Saturn are not here to give you a break, to give us a break. They're here to create incredibly deep, lasting change within the collective psyche, and that is where we're going. So bear that in mind when I'm talking about this, right? So Pluto enters Aquarius, and what it will do, part of it, what it will do, is it will reveal to us in a very transparent way. Let me just pause there for a second. I just want to bring into the conversation again Pluto's transit on the south node of Neptune. I started talking about that and I described that, but I want to come back to this, okay? When Pluto moves across the south node of Neptune, okay, we're going to get Plutonian experiences awakening the collective memory field of what that symbolism means, and that is what I'm about to explain to us right now, okay? So Jonathan talks about artificial intelligence that emerges from our dream state as a collective psyche into our world. And what Pluto will reveal to us as we become immensely fixated on the fire that this energy, that this consciousness will come into our field. We will immensely be fixated on the fire. So be careful. Please do not fixate on the, oh my God, AI just created a course for me in 5 days kind of post. Or here's how AI is going to do this. Do not be under illusions that artificial intelligence is here to accelerate us into better states of XYZ. Because if you look at the world today, the majority of the world will mirror back to you that A, we are human beings, B, don't feed us for 3 days, and C, tell me how many people will turn around and say something like, my limbic system and nervous system is completely at peace with the levels of hunger and scarcity that I'm experiencing right now, and so I will see you as, you know, this friendly spiritual being. No. The truth is that when we are backed into a corner, our more primal instincts will come out, and we will be less tolerant on things. We'll be more agitated. We'll be more capable of acts of behaviorisms that we would now label as, you know, barbaric. There's parts of our body, there's parts of our makeup that are still human, and that we try to ascend to higher states of, or deeper states of compassion, empathy, tolerance. But when put into situations, you will not find your moral compass, which is a big part of what Pluto and Aquarius will reveal to us, is where is our moral compass? So the moral compass for what it means to be human, right, is becoming more and more absent as things are happening around the world. Okay, so coming back to Pluto and Aquarius, South Node of Aquarius, as Pluto enters, goes into Aquarius, it goes over this signature, this conversation of AI, Jonathan talks about it as we find the genie's lamp, okay? And you even go and watch Aladdin to kind of integrate and emotionally connect with the themes of what happens in the film Aladdin as a way to understand Pluto and Aquarius, okay? This lamp comes in, artificial intelligence, and what it will do is it will expose our deep interests. The lamp is it's a detector that exposes and makes transparent the inner intention. All right? So Pluto entering Aquarius and then going over the south node of Neptune will open up in a very intense and accelerate and expose the intentions that are buried within ourselves, and the way that we interact with those intentions will, I don't know how to put that, how to end that sentence. It'll be like, it will expose it, and that's what, then we will react to that and try to put some rules and regulations and regulate behaviorism. So you'll see something like Minority Report come out, okay? Where it's leading up to Pluto and Aquarius, leading up to Pluto entering the South Node, the world is so unstable that there needs to be some form of action that creates a space where we don't tear each other apart. And so part of that patterning will look something like complete transparency to detect behavior that has the wrong intention. Okay? So that's a reality that will exist among other forms of micro realities that will be present. And so the thing that I'm trying to put across here is not so much that, as much as Pluto will accelerate through Aquarius humanity's distortions, and the capacity to deal with those distortions will emerge, and the responses will emerge. And so, as I said, right, there will be different ways in which we will respond to that, but we'll be still coming from the need to create the security. So here's the Saturn-Uranus thing again, right? Think of COVID as an example. I love Eric Weinstein's perspective on this. So So Eric talks about it where he simplifies it, right? He goes, you have a household and you're living in this household with a group of friends, right? Maybe say like 4 friends, Aquarius collection. And one day you bring somebody home and just like a friend, whatever, and your friends say to you, hey, did we agree that it was okay for this person to come into the house? And if the answer is yes, we all discussed it, it was super cool, fantastic, he can come, hang out in the house, that's great. Or no, that will create some conflict. It will be like, well, we didn't agree with this. So you might feel exiled from the group because your friend now can't hang out with you for a bit in your house. So you can experience that kind of exile. That's why I'm saying go watch the Saturn in Aquarius or the Shadow Side of Aquarius video, because it talks about what happens when human beings exile other human beings. And there's even the Promethean story in there too, around the woundedness of our heart. So what do you do in this situation, right? One reality is acceptance, groups are cool with it. The other is, no, you didn't tell us about this, right? The example, as I go further, speaks about at this small scale, think of visas or think of rules that are put in place to mitigate unexpected actions or behaviorisms. So here's a place that is sacred, and so here's a boundary that protects that sacredness. And in a healthy way, that's good. But in distorted ways, that can be very repressive. And that's another conflict that is present in the collective psyche at the moment. And then what emerges out of sacredness and boundary to protect is factions of what's right and wrong. So 2 people might turn to the friend and say, yeah, I'm cool with this. Other 2 people say, no, I'm sorry, I'm unexpected. It feels weird. How do I know this person's like not going to rob us, etc. And so there's multiple kind of offshoots, adaptations that come out of the complexity of boundary, safety, and then unexpected Uranus, right? So Pluto and Aquarius will bring through these themes to the surface for us to deal with. And part of that will look like, here's unresolved complexes in our collective body and psyche that on an individual level, you can connect to. So let me go down this route quickly. Actually, I'm going to stop there and come back to the story. So now what happens is, let's say, your friend or your friend, you can't stay here, and so you go and you call a meeting around the room. And you say, okay, well, how do we form the rules where we can allow for people to come into the house where everybody says it's okay, and what type of system do we need in order for us to check whether this person is okay or not? Now, if you broaden that and you think of a country has borders, as it were, and then these borders are ruled by or governed by a system that says, yes, with this type of visa, we can now know the risk that we are taking in, etc. This is the kind of principles that exist, right? We all have different opinions of how it should work. That's the point of the group meeting. But the fundamental principle of that reality itself, how it's constructed, has definition that regulates what goes in and what out. Okay? Human complexity comes in, kind of speaking to that, because one person's boundaries may feel very open and like, Saturn in the 12th house, right? I'm cool with this. Some person's boundaries may be Saturn in 8th house and say, no, I'm feeling very violated, or that this, the uncertainty of somebody coming to my house, it makes me feel uncomfortable. And so now you have one person and another person that have different ways of mitigating risk, right? Complexity or uncertainty. Now you scale that to a country, you scale that to the world, and you can start to see that it's going to be a very rough ride for us as Pluto enters Aquarius. And we will be faced with micro transactions, as in countries butting heads with each other, where this is this and this is that. And this is not new. Like, this is not something that's like, oh, well, human beings have kind of lived peacefully for eons, and so now all of a sudden this conflict's coming in. It's the complete opposite, right? We've had fairly peaceful interactions over the last 70 years, right? There has been a tremendous amount of natural war and chaos and killings and distortion. That's absolutely true in all over the world. But for the most part, we've had the ability to fly to different countries and travel and see things in foreign places and not necessarily be overly concerned a lot with the security of our lives. Whereas, going back, that's not the case, right? So risk has not necessarily been as intense, but with Pluto entering Aquarius, these things will come back to the surface. And these are the types of dilemmas that we will face. And we are starting to see, as the boundaries, definitions, rules, regulations are being renegotiated relative to what has become senescent, that is now then drawn in naturally the Aquarius principle of chaos, destruction, chaos and reordering and rupture has to take place in order to accelerate us to a place of eventually having a conversation saying, hey, how do we draw new rules here? So if I circle back to the main driving point behind this conversation and speaking to what does it look like with half the world trying to, fractured by the trauma and half the world kind of finding cohesion, well, I think a large part of Pluto entering Capricorn over the last sort of years has contributed to tools, insights, and ways of trying to emotionally regulate ourselves and recognize where our own shadows or distortions exist within us. Because moving forward into the Aquarius signature, the level of disruption that will take place collectively, that we will feel collectively, that's one thing of Aquarius, right? It's electricity. So if something happens sort of here, right, here as an example, and you're standing here, due to the nature of the capacity of the internet, that information spreads at an electric pace. We, as a collective, have not had the level of energy move so rapidly at such a fast pace from one point to another that our nervous systems and internal landscaping processes like our cognition, right, we have not been able, we do not have the capacity to process the level of information that comes into our field at the speed that it does. And this is true for anything and everything, right? If we just rewind to the earlier part of the year, the banking system collapses, right? In the past, if I needed to go to the bank because I was scared of something, I'd go to the bank and I'd say, I want to take out this money, and it would take me sort of, depending on where I live, I would have to walk there. There's a manual process that takes place. Now, with Promethean fire in my hand, aka the telephone, I can request for the funds to be changed or for some form of money to be withdrawn like this. And so that's the Aquarius piece, that's the Uranian piece, and the structures and boundaries and definitions that holds things in a natural state of safety have become senescent because this technology is pointing at it saying, hey, by the way, things have become immensely, well, it's changed. So now what you have is a natural reaction. When boundaries are set in place to protect, to create a distinct difference between safety and non-safety, and then regulating energy that comes in out there or risk, there's a natural psychological reaction, which is to say, oh no, dominate it more, suppress it, control it. So there's always this binary that takes place between Aquarius accelerating the senescent energy and then revealing the need for that senescent energy to fight back. It's just like Candida, right? If you've ever done a deep cleanse within your body, or you've gone through some form of fasting, you'll notice that in the beginning phase, your body will fight back at trying to, or at least the sort of parasites or whatever it is that you've got in your body that are dying off, they will fight back. Just like you would fight back in a scenario where you recognize the risk of the situation and said, hold on, my life's in danger, but it's not as in danger in the sense that I've got 20 people there, you know, and then you just fawn, right? You would naturally want to fight back. It's an instinct in us. So you now see this relationship between energy like Aquarius that accelerates something and brings you into a foreign landscape of like, whoa, Jesus, where are we? And the reaction of something that is dying as it recognizes its senescence. Okay, so that's another aspect of this Uranus-Saturn square, is bringing into context, flooding into our consciousness, where the rules, regulations, the boundaries, the definitions, everything have put us together in a way that we could orientate and organize ourselves. But we are now in Uranian territory. We are now in a deep state of acceleration that is bringing us into a different way of organizing ourselves as a human race that will propagate and create as a kind of like adaptation, right? What will come out of the conversation between Uranus and Saturn, right? What will come out of it will be all these different responses. Right now, we are in the response of everything is senescent, so let's try and reinforce the control that needs to take place in order to maintain the boundary, natural response. But at some point, the energy behind that will dissipate and Aquarius will change the landscape and we'll be left with an entirely new place. And for the most part, it will be incredibly foreign because everything that we've known and felt secure within and mapped reality will feel very foreign and dense and confusing. So again, as I said, we're entering a period of time over the next, I would say, 10 years where disruption and disturbance will look like, oh crap. It will feel like, oh crap. But where it's actually going is a complete change, reordering, radical shift in social, emotional, and also physical tectonic plates. The landscape in which we're about to move towards, that we are currently in, is where this is all heading. And if you've ever been in an incredibly traumatic conflict where the emotions are running high, the level of anger and pain is so present that the level of arousal in terms of the intensity of what is activated and triggered you is fractured you. You're disorientated. You feel unstable in every way. That is a byproduct of the level of disorientation or changing at a tectonic plate. We are experiencing the world move around, or the under feet of us move around and reorganize itself according to the new frequency. And as I said, whenever you've personally been in a type of disorientation or a level of conflict where the emotions are running and everything is disabled, you don't feel grounded and safe. You feel highly sensitive to unpredictability. You are attuned to anything that is a threat. You cannot think clearly. Your prefrontal cortex is gone. And there can be variations of acceptance, disassociation, or there can be variations of absolute control. So as I kind of wind down over here in terms of my sharing, I want to bring in the significance of the Pluto and Sagittarius generation. So for those of you born between 1995 and 2008, this is your story. For most of you, you will be born with Uranus in Capricorn. You will also for those, depending on how many of you are watching it, I don't think many of you that are 16, 17 will be probably watching this, but if you do know people that age, they will have Uranus either in Pisces, Uranus in Aquarius. So Uranus in Pisces, Uranus in Aquarius, Neptune in Aquarius, okay? So Pluto transited Sagittarius from 1995 all the way up until 2008, okay? So now we're dealing with the collective, right? Pluto in Aquarius, like the world we inhabit, the freedom, and particularly our philosophies, our ideologies, our points of views, our beliefs, what is true, what is not true, freedom of movement, religious wars. These are going to be popping up into the collective as the Pluto and Sagittarius emerge into the collective as their turn to start processing their soul story. The Pluto and Scorpios, you've been processing through, you know, trauma-informed work. You've been working through things like when Jupiter was in Scorpio and it was the Me Too movements, the activation of woke culture and what it means at a deeper level, right? Our attempt to try to make sense of the developing sensitivities in the world as we are working through patterns of emotional suppression. That's what the Pluto and Scorpios are about, right? Calling out things that we know are unhealthy, but also losing ourselves at the same time, right? Because Neptune's in Pisces, right? It can, and then you've got the Pluto and Libras who are all realizing that a big part of their life has been spent focusing on the other, and that part of their story is meant to actually come into their own agency. This is the Pluto and Sagittarius time right now. And it starts off with what happens when you've got conflicting ideas, perspectives, beliefs around what belongs to who and who belongs to what, and what belief is the right belief to have, and what's the perspective that's true, what is true and what's not true, and who gets to exist and who doesn't get to exist. And then how do we as a collective, as a society, build a world that can tolerate indifference, accept that the world is complex and that there are not going to be always things that will exist in a cohesive way. But what it's really setting up is a Pluto in Aquarius children that will come into the world that will actually be dealing with what that looks like as they age themselves, right? Because if you reverse back to 2099, etc., and you look back at what was taking place there, you can see things like climate change issues that were starting to emerge, things like wars that were taking place. There are many to explain. That's what's held in the collective psyche of the Pluto and Pluto and Sagittarius. But this thing right now with Pluto entering Aquarius, Pluto and Aquarius will reveal the purpose for Pluto and Sagittarius and for all of us, which is, for most Pluto and Sagittarius, you grew up with technology. And that's a whole entire massive conversation to have. But the link here that I want to put into it is that you will come into a world, you are coming into the world already, where more and more collective arguments, conflicts, where loss of life, trauma, right, will become more present, that it will start cropping up in different places. That's essentially what Uranus and Taurus is doing. It's bringing everything to the surface that has been repressed, depressed, that has been labeled taboo, that is unhealthy. It will come to the surface for us to deal with. And right now, we are in the process of starting to deal with it. It is accelerating us towards a reality of not only processing our unresolved nonsense, bringing us to realities where we need to confront this and no longer can hide from it anymore, so the transparency, and eventually lead to a place where human beings can try to find some form of acceptance of each other. It will be forced, Pluto and Aquarius. And it will be forced in a way where if there is something that is unacknowledged, that is not addressed, it will either be reacted like this, keep it controlling, keep it like this, give soma, to people so that their emotional reality disappears, because that's the cause of it. Follow the rules. Follow this rule exactly how it is. That's the Saturnian piece. That's what happens. I'll be doing another video on Saturn and what happens when Aquarius signatures erupt. There's two patterns that exist. There will be a disassociation that will create an idealistic world where everything is beautiful and wonderful, but you're deeply disconnected from your body. And then the other world where there is an absolute loss of meaning and purpose, and everything becomes colorless in its nature because you just need to forge on and hold reality and just pretend that nothing happened, right? There's the two responses that occur when dissociation or rupturing of Aquarius signatures happen. And you will see it, as I've talked about. That's the trauma piece. It's like, how do we respond to the level of emergent unpredictability that is present in the collective psyche at the moment? Do we just go, I got to live in my own bubble and just do like this? Or do I watch it and have absolutely no emotional response to whatsoever? And both of them are valid in the sense of responding to it, because it is too much. Circling back to the thing that the internet, and this is also a big part of what I felt was part of this conversation, was because technology and YouTube is so available to us right now, including me, doing the exact same thing I'm talking about, including me. So there's a good side to it and there's a bad side to it, okay? And I'll explain what I mean by this. Because we have access to every form of social media, unless you actually take your phone, which is what I did yesterday, and purposely put it away to not connect to anything outside of my most convenient environment, right? My psychology is bombarded consistently with all the impressions of every possible perspective that exists out there on this current world issue that we've been dealing with. That will become more intense. That is what Pluto and Aquarius will do. It will become more and more difficult to have your landscape not affected by the impressions of the collective psyche, because the very nature of Aquarius is to open up all channels so that everything exists all at once. Do you think that your nervous system is capable of handling that? Think about the most recent stressful experience you had, where in that situation, there were too many dimensions all present at once, and your nervous system frazzled out, and the only thing you could do was, ah! That will be part of the future. And you can already feel it. All you need to do is just spend 1 hour scrolling through the feed of YouTube and looking at all of the different videos that exist on a topic, just like with this one. It's good in one way because it helps us collectively share ideas that we can start to process reality and start to frame things so that we can sort of map it. It's dangerous because it will tear you apart at the same time, because an event can take place in the Middle East and the effect of that event can impact somebody else living in, say, England, Alaska, because the energy of Aquarius, Uranus, Neptune dissolves the boundaries, and so therefore all of a sudden what is present here will be awakened in another person's consciousness here, because that's the purpose of Pluto and Aquarius, is to awaken the consciousness, the collective, to its entire interconnectivity. So the benefit of having what you're doing right now is that I'm speaking to you in this little room, right? I'm speaking into a camera, but the impact of this voice will land in your collective psyche and you'll be digesting and downloading it, right? The realization that we have that is what this is about. But can we use it? Can we interact with it in a way that is helpful? And I would say, yes, it's already existing in some sense, but it also no. That's where Saturn comes in this conversation. I think I'll end here. Is that part of your responsibility, health in a healthy way, is to try to regulate and manage what you allow within yourself and what you can expose to. Be incredibly discerning, incredibly conscious of what is impressing you, as in what's the word that I'm currently, I can't remember the thing that I'm studying at the moment. Damn it. Inference. Okay. So the energy that what impressions are having on you and how that is shaping your landscape. Please be mindful of that. Okay, this is a time where it is essential to be mindful of what we are dealing with right now. We are dealing with complexity. We are dealing with low resolution information. We are dealing with trauma. And when you put all these things together, it's easy to start to create a resolution of the world like this and to see it this way, because what that means is that it's okay. It's okay. And for most part, that is healthy for the brain's anxiety. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that. I'm just saying mindful of that. When you reflect back from that low resolution, you will also be at the same time stopping complexity and nuance from also being present. And so that's why I'm saying that even this conversation I'm having with you right now, be mindful of what your own resolution is rendering. Okay, I'm going to end over here, peeps, because I feel that this is a good stop over here. This is processing. There are a few things that I wanted to talk about, like the wisdom of Pluto and Aquarius. I wanted to discuss more of the Pluto Sagittarius, which I think I'll do it at a different point. But from what I've gotten so far, I feel like I've hit all my notes that I wanted to say. Go check the video down in the description. Leave comments and thoughts for me in the comment section. Please be mindful of the nature of the comment itself and how this interacts. We're in incredibly sensitive times right now, and it's easy to sit here and talk with not knowing what the other person may be actually feeling on the other side. And so again, Aquarius, desensitization. So it's important to kind of just be mindful what you bring to the collective right now, as I try to hold myself to that standard. And I will probably fail lots, but at least I'm trying to be mindful of the fact that right now there's a tremendous amount of stuff being brought into the middle over here. And one of the suggestions I'm making is to just ask yourself, how am I engaging in it? Okay? All right, my friends, take care. Bye-bye.